Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of See You on the Other Side. I am your co-host, Christine. I am obviously here with Leah, and we are so very excited. We have Janna Cone here, and we have been talking to her through Instagram DMs, and I'm just so excited to actually, even though it's virtual, meet you in person today and actually have not in person, but a conversation that's not through sliding in the DMs. So welcome, Janna.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We want to
I've expressed my gratitude to you.
I know.
So
So
just
what the
thank you.
listeners don't know is we just started this episode, but we were talking, before we got started, and she has literally made us both cry already. And so we are really excited to see where this is going to go, but
maybe grab your tissues. Grab some tissues. Don't have your makeup done listening to this because I can already feel it.
Yeah.
It's going to get deep.
Yeah, but I'm excited.
I'm excited because the reason we are excited to talk to you, you reached out through Instagram. I can't even remember because time right now is such a blur. But it was after our ketamine episode, and you actually followed through and went through with ketamine treatments. And the reason I'm so excited to talk to you is because we've talked to the experts. We've talked to the people who are psychologists and the doctors and the therapists who work with this medicine. We have not heard from someone who has actually gone through the treatments. So we want to pick your brain.
Yes.
Yes.
We want to get deep.
Yes.
And I think our first question should be who you are. If you could just kind of condense it.
Yes.
Who you are, what you do, and that.
We want to learn about you.
Yeah.
Well, gosh, such a loaded question, So I live in South Carolina, and I have an adopted 4-year-old. So I am a mom. But most importantly, I feel like sometimes when you listen to a podcast, I think of the people listening to this, and I'm like, I am literally your average, girl next door. And that's the thing that I want to really point out is so many times, when, we're going to get in and talk about ketamine and depression and our mental health struggles and all those things. We think oh, it was this person that had this huge platform, and now they're, talking on this podcast, and they, had this, someone reached out to them to do this ketamine stuff and experience it. And that is not the case. I am a normal 35-year-old woman living in South Carolina, with a daughter, with a boyfriend, trying to run a business. All my business is online, and I was just trying to keep my head above water. And that's where I was when I found your podcast. And that's still, I'm still that same woman today. Just so much has radically transformed in my life in the past 2 months. I feel like I've lived 80 lives, and we'll get into that through these infusions that I've done. So yeah, that's who I am.
So can you give a little background on how you got to this point where you found us? I think you said through Instagram, but what led you to that?
Yes. So I have been diagnosed and struggled with depression since 2009. I first was depressed in 2004. I was in high school. I was diagnosed and medicated in 2009, and tried several different antidepressants throughout the years. And at times, these medications were perfect for me and worked
Mm-hmm.
really well. And I think that's a point too that I really want to make is the basis of this is not like this is the only way to go.
Right.
There were periods of times where these medications, from the Wellbutrin to the Zoloft to the Lexapro, all the things worked wonderfully for me for a period of time. But throughout my life, my adult life, the depression always came back with such a vengeance.
Mm.
It always crept back into my life. I would have periods of time, and usually I could associate these periods of time with, being on a particular medication or there was something happening in my life, where things were good.
Yeah.
But it always seemed that I would fall back into such a dark state of depression and like just in a shitty mood for no reason, or not being able to fully embrace and appreciate this life that I have. Like it just always felt like, why is life so hard for me when there
Wow.
were so many things that are great in my life? I'm so thankful for so many things, and so it was so hard for me to hold both of those things and to think like I am depressed AF and I'm literally hanging on by a thread. But then to know like you also have a great life. You have all these things to be thankful for. And I think this world conditions us to feel like we have to be one or the other. We have to either be like freaking on our game, like life is great, things are wonderful, or things are really bad and you're really depressed right now. But I was walking around with both of those things and trying to navigate this world when you feel both of those ways
Yeah.
was my constant state. And when I listened to your podcast about ketamine, one thing that I wrote down that was such a seal the deal type moment for me was oftentimes when we are in a season of depression and we're in therapy or on medications or something, we feel like when we walk out of that therapy session or when we get off the medication that we're going to return to this hell that we have been living in.
Mm.
And the podcast said something like to that effect of like, you don't have to go back and live in that hell. That by trying some sort of new treatment, that I could possibly not have to go back and live in that new hell after I walked out of that therapy session.
Yeah.
That was what did it for me. And so to answer your question, I had tried everything. I've done every medication. I've been in talk therapy, EMDR, like somatic processing, trauma informed therapy, like all this stuff. And it always felt like no matter what, I ended back up in living with depression. And so I was just like, there has got to be something else. Like, you cannot tell me that we live in a world with all these amazing resources and I'm living day in and day out feeling like crap.
Yeah.
And so I just was hopeful that, ketamine could help me. And so that sliver of hope, I didn't know if it would work, but I was willing to try it because I felt like things couldn't really get much worse,
Yeah.
to be honest.
So how did you hear about ketamine, and then how did
Yeah.
you end up finding us?
Yeah. So I was having a conversation with a girlfriend and she I knew that she had suffered with some postpartum anxiety and depression. And I had opened up to her that, I could relate to that. I had been on medications for years for depression. And she said, and it was in casual conversation, she said, well, what really worked for me was microdosing and ketamine. And I had started researching microdosing. I was really interested in all of that. And I had heard of ketamine from my boyfriend. He works in the ER, and it's a common drug they use in the ER, particularly on children. So I had heard of the drug ketamine, and I said to her, I was like, "Did you say ketamine?" And she said, "Yeah." And she did it through Mind Bloom, which is an at-home ketamine experience.
I have a
And
client
so,
who used Mind Bloom.
Interesting.
It's like a virtual, they send it to you. It's a lozenge,
yeah,
right? And they
yes,
like sit with you, watch you take it on a screen, and you swallow.
yep,
And
Wow.
yeah,
yeah,
I don't know if they,
Maybe we should do that.
yeah.
I don't know if they can like ship it anywhere. I don't know how that works, but
There, yeah, there are a few states that are excluded, but majority of the states, I looked into it, it's available, and I compared the cost for that versus the infusions, and it was about the same. And so
wow.
I went, yeah, yeah. So she planted that little seed in me, and it wasn't a full conversation. I didn't even circle back with her on it because it when you're in that in this season or in that stage of depression, it was almost like a little glimmer
Mm.
of like hope that came from her. And I was like, oh, I'm going to grab onto that. And I went and did my own research. And I actually reached out to her after I had done the first infusion and said, I did ketamine. And she was like, what? We didn't even really talk about it. And I was like, I was like, this could work. And then so I started searching on Instagram hashtags like ketamine infusions and ketamine for depression. And I found one of your posts where you were promoting your episode with the Revitalist CEO. And so I found that on your Instagram and then went down the rabbit hole to
I
your
am so
podcast.
thankful for
I was
hashtags right
literally
now.
about to say, moral of
Because
the
then-
story, hashtags matter. They really
Right.
They
do.
do.
Because
They
I feel
do.
like we have like even just through Instagram DMs, we have kind of formed this like special like relationship with you. Like we've
Totally.
been following you on this journey like before you even
Yeah.
started, and to watch like this progress
Yeah.
has been incredible.
I do. I
Yeah.
want to ask a few questions because I do want to get into the way that you've kind of not showcased. What's the word? You have an Instagram highlight where you share
Oh, yes.
your journey
Yeah.
in each
Yeah.
infusion.
Yeah.
And I want to get into that, but I want to
Yeah.
circle back to the depression a little bit. Because you said it started in high school, but you weren't diagnosed until 2009. I think what a lot of people are unaware of or maybe not well versed in is the fact that like depression can show up in a lot of ways. And you have said you didn't know you were depressed. I didn't realize it was depression for a while.
No one ever talked about it.
No one ever talks about it. So was it you didn't know you were depressed because you just, thought that was just like what you were supposed to feel, or how did you know something was off?
One thing for me that really stood out was my energy levels. Just every afternoon, I mean, consistently, and I could pinpoint it between like 2 and 4 p.m. I felt like I could go and crawl up in my bed and not just take like a little snooze or a rest for a second, but go to sleep, like in a deep, deep sleep. And I think that there's a time like where naturally, our bodies want to rest, but
Sure.
when it became repeated for me to where it was all I wanted to do was crawl in the bed, shut my eyes, and go to sleep. And that's just disassociating from
I was just going to
reality.
say, is that kind of like if I'm sleeping, it's better than this? But
Yeah.
But
yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
not even realizing that
Yeah.
Yes.
because you're so unaware with yourself in those
Right.
moments. Like you don't know, you don't even know
Like you
what you
just feel
need.
tired, but you just can't explain like why.
Yeah.
I guess that's the thing too. You're talking about having this great life on paper and all these amazing
Mm-hmm.
things, and then
Mm-hmm.
struggling with feeling depressed. And I talked about this. I don't think in an episode with us and somewhere else, where that almost was more of a struggle because then I would feel guilty for not
Yes.
feeling good.
Yeah.
And so at the time my husband didn't understand it, would be like, I don't understand why you're so depressed. You have this great life. You have these healthy kids and you
Yep.
know, this career. And I'm like, well, shit, thanks for making me feel bad about it. Like now I'm more depressed.
Totally. Totally. There is 100% a shame piece around it. And that piece of shame is 100% what kept me from actually getting aggressive to treat the depression.
Mm.
Because the stories that we tell ourselves are so many other people have it worse.
Yeah.
I have so many things to be grateful for
Yeah.
that almost we create this story of shame that we don't deserve to feel as good
We
or
gaslight
better.
ourselves basically.
Yeah, we do.
100%.
Like you shouldn't be feeling
Yeah.
this way, snap out of it. And it's not that easy.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing that stood out to me, I, as part of the ketamine integration, and we can talk about this, is seeing a psychiatrist. And I did a few weeks ago, and we sat down and I started, talking to him. And I mentioned, I went into that self gaslighting and I said, I know so many other people have it worse, or, I know I have a good life. I blah, blah, blah. I know all this. And he stopped me mid sentence and he said, can we just focus on you? Because that's what you're here for. And it was just a moment of like, that's what you've been doing your whole life. Or that you're this whole journey of not wanting to get aggressive and treat this is because you look at yourself compared to other people and you see that other people have it worse. And so you feel bad for feeling the way that you do. So
Wow.
that's a huge piece of, I think, recognizing that you have depression is actually admitting that like you're depressed,
Yeah.
regardless of what your life looks like. It does not discriminate. It does not.
So this is I'm going to ask this. You don't have to answer it because I'm starting to
Yeah.
think like this was my situation. I subconsciously thought that maybe I wasn't worthy
Yeah.
to feel good. Like I started to settle into this is just how it's going to be forever. This is just what I'm supposed to feel. And I remember writing a post when I was like coming in and out of depressive episodes saying, it's okay to be depressed and this is just the rest of my life and I'm going to struggle with depression forever and this is just how I manage it. And then looking back on that post now and seeing where I am now, I'm like, no, I was settling
Ooh.
because I
Yeah.
didn't believe. I'm going to start
Wow.
crying because I'm having this realization now. But it's almost like you don't believe that you deserve more because you feel like other people have it worse. They deserve the help. They deserve the healing. And you're like, I don't deserve that. What have I done? I can't even appreciate what I have. It's on a psychological level of not feeling worthy of love and feeling good.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Completely agree. And you talk yourself out of actually doing something and being proactive about feeling better because you think this is just life.
Yeah.
And then it goes even further, or at least it did for me. that I thought, well, everyone else must feel this way and I just can't handle it. Or I just can't keep up with it. And it's not the case.
And then you're like, something's wrong with me.
Yep.
Because I can't do it the way other people are doing it. I can't. It's so much.
It's so
deeper than what people think it is. Depression. Yeah. It's multifaceted. It shows up differently in everyone. But it's just crazy to me that the common denominator in most of these situations is, I'm thinking back on your medicine journey and just trying different things and it working for a specific amount of time, and then it worked until it didn't.
Right.
So it's kind of like you're constantly chasing this bare minimum of normalcy without realizing that there's something else that could kind of push you over the side a little bit to getting to the root of the problem. Yeah. And I guess that's where ketamine came in for you.
Yeah.
Yes. It was, for me, when I knew that ketamine was the right avenue, I knew that I needed more than just a different form of therapy. I knew that I had literally tried all the new ways of somatic processing, and I had tried all the different medications, yes, but I felt like I had literally tried everything to try to help my brain feel better. And I knew I had to try something else other than what I was doing. And I got cold feet about it for sure. We can talk about all of that too.
It's okay. I just made a connection because a friend of mine who, I need to reach out to her, but I can't give too much information away, but she reached out to you. You guys have been talking.
I didn't know that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Because she, I think, is finishing her treatments here in Louisville. And she told me she had talked to you through DMs several times. You guys were kind of on the same trajectory, the same course, started at the same time. She had to take a week off, I think. But it's crazy, the connection here. I want to get into what that looked like for you, what ketamine treatments looked like for you, where you went, what the protocol was.
Yes. And consult.
All that stuff, because that's something that we're not familiar with. Right. I'm like, I kind of want to do it just to know, but let's hear it from you.
Yeah. So do you want to know about the process of how I found a place near me and all that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So honestly, I went and I Googled the closest city to me, ketamine treatment centers, because it's so new everywhere. And I was considering I was going to go to Louisville to the clinic that you all recommended. And I was looking into traveling and how that was going to work. And I just did a search to see if there was somehow a clinic near me. And there was. And so that would be my first recommendation, is for anyone to do a search and see what is around you. And I called, and I'm telling you, the people at these types of clinics that answer the phone have a special gift. All the women that work at the clinic, I call them my angels, because they are answering the phone and meeting people when they walk through their door, in their darkest moment. And so making that first phone call when you're on the other side and you want to make that phone call, it's like, oh, what am I getting myself into? And so I called and I spoke to the receptionist at the front desk. And, part of doing ketamine, it's never anyone's first form of treatment with depression. And so they kind of put you through a screening process to see what's your history with depression, or, whatever your main issue is. And so she just asked a few questions, are you on any medications? Have you seen a doctor? Have you been hospitalized ever for any mental health issues? They kind of want to gauge where you are. And she, was able to just ask me a few questions and figure out if I was a candidate. And I was able to schedule an appointment. And the way that this clinic set it up, which was really great, is you went in for a consult, but they built in time to your appointment for your first treatment. So you didn't have to go for your consult, get all the information, and then come back. And so she sent me paperwork to fill out, and it was really just your standard pre-doctor appointment paperwork. Some mental health focused questions, but really not a ton of paperwork. And then I printed that paperwork out and it sat on the floor by my desk for like a good 5 days because it's not cheap right now.
Right.
Anyway, I think in the future, I hope and believe that it'll become more affordable and that insurance may play into it in some way. We shall see. But there were so many reasons that I could have lined up to not do it. It's expensive. It's time consuming. You have to have someone to drive you there and home. There were all the things. And so I sat with the paperwork for a good 5 days. And you go into that self-protecting spiral again of like, I don't know if I'm going to do this. It's because you essentially go on a psychedelic trip. You do. And if you've never been on a psychedelic trip or anything like that before, it can be scary. But I just said, I clung to the hope that I could feel better. And that if this worked to make me feel better, then it was worth it for me.
Yeah.
Now,
I could not.
Had you ever done psychedelics before
I had,
this?
well, I had started microdosing,
Okay.
which isn't really a psychedelic trip
Right.
in my experience. So I had done microdosing and I have, I love a Delta 8 gummy. And so that was like the closest to anything, psychedelic-ish.
Okay.
But I also knew, and I share it all, and so I hope this is okay here.
Yes.
But for a
We do
period
too.
of time, okay, for a period of time, and this is when I knew too, like, this depression is serious. The only time I would get any tinge of a relief from the depression and a relief from my freaking brain was when I would take a Delta 8 gummy. And I could only take it at night because it absolutely impairs me. And I would never have my child in my care, and I would never drive a car and never leave my house. So I was like, this is the only relief I'm getting.
We've talked about that before, like how it was. I like the way that you're saying it though, because I've compared it to escaping myself. But I like the way you're saying it was a relief. And that's a very good description because it was one of the few times you've said like you felt good.
Right. And right before you and I met up and I decided to do my mushroom journey, I had taken a Delta 8 and I was, sitting on the couch with Tony and I just looked at him and I was like, I just want to be able to feel normal on my own.
Yes.
And that was kind of the start of it. Because it was an escape, so I could just feel calm.
Yeah. I think, too, the reason they probably plugged that first session into your consult is because they know how difficult of a decision that is. And if you have any time to walk away from that, you're going to sit and think on it some more.
Yeah. And so when I went for the consult, you take your paperwork and each treatment room is really like a cozy little office. And I've shared it on my Instagram to give people a visual because it's not like a sterile hospital environment, or at least the clinic that I went to isn't, and I went to Greenville Ketamine Center in Greenville, South Carolina. There's a recliner and it reclines you back, and the room is cozy. They dim the lights. There's a TV. I always watch like ocean scenes. They have like a little laser projector that goes on the ceiling in different colors, and there was music on. So you got there and they take you into the room. You do have to have someone with you, which is, I love that they do this. Like there isn't a thing that the clinic does that doesn't have meaning behind it. So you had to take someone with you. So I took my boyfriend because he is my, support through all of this. So you have to take someone with you that, knows what you're going to go through and all of that. And so the nurse practitioner came into the room and she sits down, and you've had nothing at this point. Like you're 100% sober. And she explained how ketamine works on the brain. And the way she explained it, I want to go back and record her or something, because she explained your neuropathways like a fishing net. And that over time, having depression and being medicated for years, that our fishing net loses its strength. And so the pieces that were once tightly connected starts to unravel. And the fishing net are neural pathways. And what ketamine does is it comes in and it repairs that fishing net and creates new ones. Wow. So that our neural pathways are either repaired, strengthened, or new ones are created. So she's explaining this all to you. And I'm sitting there, and even while I was in the chair for the consult before the first treatment, again, those thoughts came up of, I can't believe I'm here, that things have gotten to this point. And I'm there about to get the treatment, and I'm still thinking, I cannot believe I am here. And she explained all of that. And then she gave me a piece of paper and said, you may find, and we highly recommend that you see a psychiatrist, because any medications that you're on, when you do ketamine, it's been shown that once you're repairing those neural pathways, that those medications that once didn't work for you can start to work again or start to work better.
Wow.
So
interesting.
Yeah, and there's research behind all of that. And so they recommended a certain psychiatrist for me to go to for integration, to not stop taking medications that I was taking.
That's a huge thing. I think a lot of people are terrified to come off.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was one thing when I called to first set up the appointment. She asked, what medications are you on for your mental health? We want you to continue those and continue them through the infusions.
That also feels like a safety net, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, they give you resources for integration, which I think is really important with any sort of psychedelics, is to have your people, your support team.
We need
have
community.
Your resources lined up. And so she went through all of that. And then at that session, you go ahead and schedule 6 sessions. So the first 6 have to be within 2 weeks. And then, so within 14 days, and granted, it's really just 10 days because it's a Monday through Friday business. Within those 10 days, I had to do the first 6 treatments. And then I went ahead and scheduled those out. And that's another thing that I think why ketamine maybe hasn't taken off is there is research that shows that on the front end of your ketamine treatment, they kind of have to like sucker punch it to you. Like a lot of it has to come on at the beginning and then they space it out after that. And that's been consistent with any clinic that I've looked into. It's within the first 10 to 14 days, you have this many sessions and then you space them out. So we went ahead and scheduled all of those appointments. And I think it's really smart that they do it while you're there, just so
Yeah.
it's on the books.
Right.
And then I had, I signed whatever paperwork I needed to do. And before each session, they have like a self-evaluation form front and back, like one side's for depression, one's for anxiety symptoms. And it asks you those standard questions, like since your last visit, have you felt any of these ways? And so you kind of like self-assess and then you can look at your progression throughout. But I signed that form and then I had the choice if I wanted my boyfriend to stay in the room with me the first session. And I said yes, just because for nerves, you just don't know what to expect. But what was important is they told him, and I would tell anyone this that decides, if they want to have someone else in the room with them, they let him know, hey, she's going to be in an altered reality. So she's going to see you. She's not going to go to sleep. Like my eyes were open the whole time. She's going to see you. She might try to interact with you. But they told him, don't try to prompt her in conversation. You're just here. You can answer her, but don't ask her questions. Don't try to spark, anything to lead her down a certain path. And so that was good. And after the first infusion, he was in the room with me. I never had him in the room again for the other, 8 treatments. I felt fine. And you're on a video camera, and I'm sure that this is standard for all clinics, but there's a video in the room. So you're monitored. They're not in the room at this particular clinic with you, but they let you know you're on video and, video and sound recorded. And they can watch you from the, nurse's station desk, and they come in about every 15 or 20 minutes. But your perception of time during the infusion is completely skewed. Like for me, it felt like I was there 10 years. And
Oh my
then they'd be
God.
like, you were here 60 minutes.
It's kind of like mushrooms.
I was going to say that feels a lot like psychedelics.
Exactly. And so that's kind of the gist of how it works. And they also give you a little necklace that has kind of a call button on it. And so at any time, and they told me this before they would actually give the medicine, at any time you feel scared or any type of way, you can press that button. So I think that that's really comforting for people too, to know, because the nurse would come in and they can, titrate your dosage a little bit.
Yeah. So was each time a different dose, or how
Yes.
do you know how they dosed it? Ooh.
Yes. So each time your dosage goes up, and they call it like titrating your dose, which is when, it goes up each time. So, and I've kept like a running log of all of this, because the first one afterwards, I was like, yeah, that was intense. And then after I had the second one, I looked back on the first one and I was like, oh, that was mild. And then it got like even more and more, especially the last few. I think they like tapered off my dosage a little bit, because I was like,
That's a lot.
that was crazy. Yeah.
Another friend or a client, her husband did these treatments and kind of said the third treatment for him was the hardest. Did you feel like any of them were harder than the last? Or did it just progressively kind of like go up and up and up?
I never felt like any of them were hard.
Okay.
But I think that is for a few reasons. And everyone's journey is going to be so different
Right.
when they do ketamine, and that's the thing. But for me, I never went into an infusion with an intention, which is different from some psychedelics.
Right.
My intention of the whole thing was get me out of this depression, period. And whatever I need to do that, let it be. And after the first infusion, because I simply did not know what to expect. After the first one, I was like, okay, I can handle this. And I let go of any label in my mind of something being a good or a bad trip. I just let it be.
I do too.
And and I did like some reading on this, and I listened to podcasts all the time, and it was Audrey Marcus, who I'm obsessed with. He said,
Same. We
obsessed.
love him.
Love him.
And Vailana.
And his wife.
Let's just say right now that eventually they'll be on your podcast.
Oh God!
I'm putting it
that out there.
Right now.
Are we manifesting this?
Let's manifest that.
Yes,
put it out
we
there.
are.
Okay.
We are.
Big fans.
But he said, and this changed everything for me. He said, a trip only becomes a bad trip when you're trying to control it.
Yes.
And after that, because that's only when and so I heard that between the first and second infusion. Like, okay, because I felt a tinge of that the first one, but I know it like, okay, it's happening. Like, yeah, I'm definitely removed from reality right now. And then you like keep trying to control it a little bit. Mm-hmm. But once I came out of the first infusion or like the first trip or whatever you want to call it, and I realized like, I'm okay, then I just kind of surrendered to it, and nothing was good or bad. The hardest part for me, and I've been very open about this on my Instagram, has been there's been a period of recovery for me. That could also be in my nature of like, I'm all into human design and I'm a projector. We've talked a little bit about this. And as a projector, we rest, we nap, we're supposed to. So that could be part of what made my recovery so hard. And hard in terms of
like the come down after.
I felt like truly it was just like I had just run a marathon every time. Wow. And
So do you think that maybe you were so tired after because, what was your experience like? Were you purging out a lot of stuff in the sense of, maybe having a realization of some of the things that were the root issue of the depression or memory pop up or, something, because releasing that's a lot. That is so much. So it is exhausting.
Yeah. Yes. I completely agree with you. And I think when we go through any sort of trauma in our life and trauma, I used to think that like trauma meant like a physical trauma or sexual trauma, like everyone has trauma.
A big trauma.
And I'm so glad that this is such a normal conversation now around trauma. But when you go through the trauma, we know that's emotionally exhausting and physically exhausting and whatever. Like we know that. But actually, when you have to recount your trauma, either through like talk therapy or psychedelics, when you sort of relive or confront that trauma, you actually go through the exact same amount of trauma again. Yeah. So it makes sense.
Right.
Like no flipping wonder. I was so tired after. And I just allowed my body to be like, you know what? You are literally rewiring your brain.
Yeah.
So allow yourself to rest. Um,
I
and
think,
that's exactly what I did.
yeah, it's the same. I mean, you basically did multiple psychedelic trips within a week. And for me,
Yeah.
I try to tell people one of the things that I recommend if you are looking into doing some type of healing dose, heroic dose of anything, it should be a 3-day thing, not a 1-day thing. Don't have something planned for the next day. Don't do anything heavy the day before. Don't do anything heavy the day after. And I don't mean like heavy lifting. I mean like
Yeah.
don't go to work because
No.
it's going to take a lot. And
Yeah.
you said this earlier, and I say this about even mushrooms. Like sometimes it feels like 10 years of therapy in a few hours.
Yes.
What comes up for me energetically, what it feels like, it's a release, and I feel great after.
Yes.
But it still
Yes.
takes so much out of you emotionally and energetically and physically too, because you're right. That is literally your brain doing some work on
Well,
itself.
Yeah.
and even after I did my heroic dose of mushrooms, like I love Bravo TV and Real Housewives, and I'd turn on Real Housewives and I'd be like, I like can't even vibe with this right now because it's like
Yeah.
it's just it was sensory overload, or I would really be aware of, you know, if I was around a certain person and maybe they were a toxic energy. Like I was much more sensitive after, where I'm like, I can't listen to this, or I can't watch this, or I can't be around this, like because
Yeah.
it was like it would be too much. Like I had to,
Take it easy.
yeah, and keep it
Yeah.
mellow.
So that also makes sense. Like I love your, I'm going to tell you right now, my favorite munchie snack of all time is Coca-Cola and Rice Krispie treats.
Oh my God.
So every time you would post that, like, you know what time it is, I'd be like, oh my God, I love Coke and Rice Krispie treats. That's like my favorite high snack.
Absolutely.
I love
Like
that.
clear your calendars, like get all the feel good snacks and foods and like what
Comfort
you
foods.
get it all. Yeah.
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 For
That was
sure.
always my thing. And I do think that adjusting like your schedule and your routine around whenever you do any sort of psychedelic therapy is really important because things one, you will never be the same, but especially right after you are hypersensitive to
Yeah.
noises, or at least I was, like
Yeah.
noises, crowds,
Energies.
people, like, yeah, you're just very, very sensitive.
Well, and I think you're much more aware in your body of maybe
Yeah.
what are some things that
Like
could
make you
throw
feel
you,
tense.
yeah, could
or-
throw you off or make you feel tense, or like the energy doesn't vibe, or, you know, whatever. There's a misalignment there. Where before
Yes.
I was so out of tune with myself that, again, depression would hit, a panic attack would hit, where now I can sense like, yeah, that's not for me. Or I can kind of sense like, okay, I'm starting to go down this way and I need to fix some things or whatever. So you're just way more in tune with your body, I feel like.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. I
What
completely
did,
agree.
so I can try to explain to people what my mushroom experiences were like. And I've done it before, but I still feel like people are like, okay. Like they're very hard to explain. So is that kind of the same with ketamine? Like what came up for you? Would you be able to describe it, or is it just more of a feeling?
So I I remember every bit of every infusion except a few times towards like the eighth and ninth last infusion. And that's when they had to like take my dosage down a little bit. How I would describe it is, at least for me, was very, very visual. I was never removed from, well, a few times I was removed from the reality of the room I was in, but I always had my sight. I always could see everything going on, and everything was extremely fluid, is the best way I can describe it. Like if in my, like, the TV in the room was on and it had, water scenes or underwater scenes. When the scene would change from one thing to another, it was almost like things kind of melted in. And a few times, like, really weird, one of like the weirdest things was the Grand Canyon turned into mountains by an ocean that had like water just rushing over the Grand Canyon. And I was way up here, like flying in and over it.
Sounds fun.
It was quite a ride. And
literally.
Yeah. And then I would, the prisms on the wall from like the laser, they were always like really beautiful colors, like purples and blues and bright colors. Everything was so beautiful. Like nothing that I saw was unappealing. So it was mostly for me seeing scenes and, like, in the back of my head, working through crap that would come up for me. And what became so clear to me in these infusions were what's really important in life. And I see why ketamine infusions help someone who is suicidal for this reason, because you feel like you are completely removed from the world and you feel completely like you're not in your day-to-day life interacting with other people. Like it's you in this world and there's nothing else. There's no time, there's no money. Nothing that is so tangible and real in our society actually exists in the ketamine infusion. And so you come out with just this greater perception on what is life. And so it removes you from this reality that you're living in, which when you are depressed, like, is hell. It completely takes you away from that. And then it's like when it wears off, you come back into reality. And you feel like for a moment, and this is why I believe it could be so helpful for someone that's suicidal, is you feel like you have had an opportunity and a chance to leave this world and come back.
The way you're describing that makes me feel like, okay, we've never done ketamine, so it's kind of funny talking to somebody who I have no idea what this is, but I kind of want to do it now. But it sounds a lot like maybe it removed all the outside stuff and it removed all the noise and the hustle and bustle of life, and it was just you.
Yes, it was just me. And many times in during the trip, I'm sitting in a room by myself, and there is no one else and nothing else. And if you think about it, like, that is the essence of life in its most pure form. Like we come into this world alone and we leave this world alone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the freaking truth. And so and it just like occurred to me, and it's still every single day I have like new aha moments of like, if you are not okay, if you yourself are not okay, if your mental health is not okay, there isn't a thing in this world that matters. Like there is no person, there is no job, there is no amount of money, there's no thing, there's no house, there's no car, there's no advancement. Like there is absolutely nothing else that freaking matters if you are not taking care of yourself. And nothing, like nothing else matters.
I
And it's, or go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
It's just, part of me thinks sometimes I'm like, I'm so glad like the world of psychedelics is getting so much attention now.
Yeah.
Because it's so sad to think that sometimes it takes such a like mental tragedy to want to get back to like who we came here to be.
Yeah.
And in the first place.
Yeah. Well,
I
and
think,
a lot.
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm gonna lose my thought. I think, and I don't know if there's a science behind this. I don't know if it's been talked about, but I really have. I think maybe I have said this before. Like I think depression and anxiety and panic attacks and anxiety attacks. I think it's when we are so far removed from who we are at the core, because
Yeah.
everything else matters more, and it's hard to attach to ourselves because we've lost ourselves.
Yes.
So I really think in most psychedelic experiences, it kind of removes all that other stuff and the societal beliefs and the familial beliefs and the religious beliefs and all these patterns and, you know, things that we agreed to, agreements that don't resonate with us, just to have some source of connection with people that make us feel good. When we realize after an experience like that, oh, I don't need that. I can make myself feel good. I can do this on my own. I was doing those things because it made you happy. I'm going to start doing what makes me happy. And you start to feel more in touch with who you are. And I do think that like over time, you said you keep getting these like little downloads of information. I think that continues to happen.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
That was all I was going to say.
Well,
it's just a coming home to yourself. It feels like for me.
And what I was going to say is so many of us are so lost within ourselves. And so psychedelics, ketamine, it's like the last line of, you know, you're just searching for something, where I would love to get to a point where it's more normalized that you start to feel off. And so maybe doing psychedelics or ketamine may be the first thing that you kind of go to, instead of like you're at such a rock bottom and you're like, I've got nothing else. I guess I'll go with this because it seems like you did it. I was that way.
I was that way.
Right. Where
I
it was
like
just like,
desperate.
I'm like drowning and I can't keep doing this to myself. And it was just like a last hope.
Yeah.
And I hate that for people, though.
But we all saw that in it. Like we all saw that, like, you know, I know that sometimes what we talk about to people who aren't in this space are like weirded out, but I'm like, you know, if you're hearing something like this, or you're hearing your story, Janna, and you hear hope,
Yeah.
like you're not alone.
Yeah.
It's not the end. You don't have to feel this way forever. You deserve to feel better. And I guess that brings me to my next question. Where are you now? When was your last treatment? And how do you feel now?
So I had the 9th treatment 2 weeks ago. Maybe 2 weeks ago tomorrow, I think. And I don't think I've ever had this much like clarity and energy, but not in a sense of like restless hyper energy, just a renewed, crisp vision for my life going forward in terms of everything, professionally, personally, relationships with friends, family, just a renewed sense of being. And I joke sometimes and say, like, has everyone been feeling great and everybody been feeling like this, and I've just been feeling like crap for years and years, and no one has told me that
No
like
one
you can
told
feel
me.
better. Yeah. And I catch myself a lot of times, doing things that I really enjoy doing, and I'm like, it took me hitting such a crappy rock bottom and doing something about it in order to feel good again. And so overall, I feel hopeful. I feel thankful that something seemed to give me longer lasting results. And so what the next phase is for me is I'm going to transition to a ketamine nasal spray, which is through a special compounding pharmacy, through my psychiatrist, but he recommended the ketamine spray for maintenance. Okay. And then I can do the infusions if and when I need them periodically. But the ketamine nasal spray is not something that you do daily. So it's similar to microdosing in that way of, he said, we'll try it every 5 days or every 3 days. And I also am microdosing, and it's been fully, given the stamp of approval by like your psychiatrist, if someone needs that. But so now microdosing, ketamine nasal spray as I need it, infusions if I need it here and there. And I'm trying a new form of Delta 8, and I've talked to my psychiatrist about all of this too. And that's why finding the right provider that is okay with all of this was important to me. I wanted I didn't want your run-of-the-mill psychiatrist that would not understand ketamine and that I couldn't talk openly about microdosing with.
And there's still a lot that don't even know anything about it,
No. Yeah. Exactly. And so I laid it all out on the table for him, and he recommended a Delta 8 liquid form that I've ordered to try. And because I told him, I said, the Delta 8 gave me such relief in my brain before all of this. So I'm hoping that this liquid form isn't going to like impair me that much. It's going to be similar to like a microdosing setup.
Yeah.
So that's where I am now. That's the plan.
It's beautiful. Forward.
I know.
Yeah.
And I think I don't remember if we shared this before we started recording, but we've talked about ketamine, but we've only listened to the experts. And I think it's so important to hear stories from just, everyday people who
aren't in that space. Right. It's incredibly brave. And I mean, that's huge. So number one, thank you for being okay with sharing with us. Number two, I love that you shared your journey on Instagram.
Yes.
to the masses.
Yes, you're very vocal on Instagram, and I love that.
And I recognize that not everyone is in a position, you know, either career-wise or family-wise where they can openly share, but those stories are what like other people listen to and what other people relate to.
Yeah. And that's been really important to me as I have been on this journey through my infusions is, I mean, for the past several years, I've been active on, like, very active on social media and Instagram in particular, and I've always, the constant for me has always been, I will always be as real and as authentic as possible, regardless of what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And so when I started opening up about my struggles with depression and mental health and microdosing and doing these ketamine infusions, it was true confirmation for me that more women who are just like you and me need to hear this kind of stuff, because it has been stigmatized and swept under the rug and kept hush hush for so long, and still is. And not everyone wants to share when they go through something like this, and that is perfectly fine. I have found for me that I love sharing about it because it gives hope and light for other people, and they can relate. And the women that I have heard from that say, like, I get it, I understand, I was there, or this gives me some hope that, like, maybe there's something else for me that I can, you know, explore. So if I can be that person, that light for someone to see what I've walked through and can ease some of their shame and doubt and worry and what will people think, and, you know, like, use me as the one that has walked this before you and aired it all out. So that's just what I believe that part of my purpose is here for, is to help women who are just like me and you, that are going through things that are heavy and dark and they feel alone. Like, I'm trying to be that person that I wish I had found when I felt so horrible.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's good.
I go through that a lot, feeling, not with listeners, with close people, feeling like, like I had to do this alone and you're coming to me for all the answers. Like, absolutely not. But, and that's my resistance. I totally get that. So it's very difficult when you're that person. It's hard to remember, like, that people are looking to you and you did go through the fire to come out the other side. You know, you're not unscathed, but you're letting them know how you did it. And something that I posted, I think last week for World Mental Health Day, you know, I love that mental health is being talked about openly and destigmatized. And it's being more normalized. I love that. I love the communication and the awareness around it and the language around it. But what I also think needs to be normalized is that you don't have to be that way forever.
Exactly.
There is another side to it. And I don't think that is what's talked about enough, because where you were very open with your mental health before psychedelics were in my life, so was I. I talked about feeling depressed and feeling anxious, and people are like, oh my gosh, me too. You know, and it's there's a connection there. And then when I did something about it, it was a different type of, like, holy shit, she found a way out. How did you do it? You know, and that is, you know, I'm curious what your energy type numbers are. What are your human design? What is your personality type? Your projector,
6'2".
a 6'2".
Yeah, projector 6'2".
I don't remember what those are. Is a 6 like the hermit?
it's the hermit and what is it's the hermit and also, I don't know if I'm giving like the proper technical terms to all this, but the fact that I think it's this, I don't know which one's the hermit, the six or the two, but the other one is the fact that you may have lived three in particular lives. And so your first life, they say, is like your from 1 to I think it's 30 or 20. And then your second life is between like 30 and 50. And then from your year 50 on is like your pinnacle, you know, the best years of your life. And I can absolutely relate to that when I look at my life, like different periods and chunks of time that I've
Wow.
done different things professionally or yeah.
So you're like at a
that's what
place
that
right now
is.
where you're like, and it's gonna get better.
Exactly. Exactly.
I love
Exactly.
that. And you just turned 35, so you really are
Yeah.
kind of like stepping into this
New chapter.
Yeah, new chapter of life. And
Yeah.
I'm so
Yes.
proud
Yeah.
of you. I'm sure your daughter and your boyfriend, so proud of you.
Thank you.
I do want
Thank
to
you.
ask one question.
Well, I was just gonna say we're both
Yeah.
projectors and we have both adopted.
Yeah.
So
Really?
Yeah. She
I
when she said that
I know
earlier,
when
I
you
saw
said
you
it
like
earlier. I know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I knew you were a projector, but I didn't know that you
Yeah.
had adopted.
I love that. Look at all these connections.
I know.
My question to you, oh no. Oh no.
No, you didn't lose it, did you? Get it. Get it, get it, get it, get it, get it, get it, get it. Well, think about on it. I had a question, and that was
Okay.
your boyfriend seems incredibly supportive.
Yes.
Have other people in your circle been incredibly supportive?
That was my question.
There you go. Yes.
Love you.
Love you more.
You know, for the majority, like 99.99% of people, yes, have been extremely supportive. My boyfriend is actually the first one. The people that are closest to your lives, whether it's your boyfriend, husband, whatever, the people that see you every day really, 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 really know you.
Mm-hmm.
And I will never forget, I was at my kitchen sink, like washing my hands. This was right before I like went the ketamine route and found your podcast. I mean, had to be within days. I was at the sink washing my hands, and he knew like I was feeling all these types of ways, like it was obvious to him. And he came up to me and he said, "You're hanging on by a thread, aren't you?" Wow. And I looked at him and I was like, yes. I was like, I'm barely hanging on. And so he has been so supportive from the get-go. And once I had his support, and before I really opened up on social media, because I care about him and I respect him, and his family follows me and my family follows me. I said, are you okay if I open up about all of this? Because I respect you. I want to make sure. And he said, yes. He said, I hope that you will be as bold as you want to be about it and share as much as you want to share about it. And so then I just really went full tilt and shared everything
I love that though.
my social media about it. And what I did too, my dad was the other one that my dad isn't on social media, and I really respect him and we have a great relationship. And I knew if I was opening up about all of this to the world, that I wanted to be sure those in my closest innermost circle were aware of everything, that they weren't finding out everything through social media.
Yeah.
And so I went to my dad, and that was one of the hardest things, was going to him face to face, and you're sitting down with a parent. And now being a parent, I can only imagine how this would feel. And I went to him and I just said, he knew that I would, had suffered from depression and all the things, but he didn't know exactly how bad it had gotten. And I laid it all out for him. And I just said, I want you to know that this is how I'm feeling. This is where I am. And this is what I'm doing about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't asking for permission because I didn't need that from him. But I just wanted him to know, like, this is the direction I'm going. And I hope that you'll, respect that. And he absolutely did. But that for me, even as, open and public as I am about it, it's still important to make sure, that you've got that group of your core people.
The support is
support you.
Huge part of it. Because
And
I can't imagine doing something like that and having no one in your corner to understand or support or be there as you're going through it.
Exactly. And what I have found too is that the people that love you and support you want nothing more than to see you happy in whatever that takes.
Yeah.
And whatever that looks like, and whatever choices and paths like you go down. The people that love you and who are for you want nothing more than for you to be happy.
Yes.
That's and hard to hear. That you are like deserving of that and you're worthy of that. And sometimes like everyone's path is different on what makes them, feel better and makes them happy. Yeah. And sometimes you have to like take the reins and run towards whatever it is for your mental health that makes you feel better.
And I do think that the people who aren't for you end up falling off along the way. And that's hard. And I think that that's another layer of healing that really doesn't get talked about a lot because it's difficult.
Right.
Right. And I'm not assuming that you've gone through this. I know Christine and I have, where we've lost some people that we never would have thought, would not want the best for us. And that was
and even people that I haven't lost, they're not necessarily completely out of my life, but the dynamic has
shifted a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And that's okay too.
Yeah.
And I think it's as real of a reality as that is, I think as equally important for us, like on the receiving end of that, when people choose to, rotate out of our lives or whatever, is just as much as we have the right to our own healing, we have to extend that right to them, that like, you can walk away from this, and because you're on your own path.
Yeah.
Everyone's on their own path, and like just knowing that if we're not aligned right now, we're not aligned. And I'm okay with that. And that's great.
Well, I think that's where it's hard too, because I feel like I am okay with these, but like I feel bad because I feel like they're not okay with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like I'm okay with the separation, like, because to me, I see growth and I want you I want the best for you.
Right. Yeah. It's not ill will.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. And at the end of the day too, it still goes back to that, like we all have to walk in our own shoes every day, you know, and this is my healing journey, and this is the path that I'm on. And we want the same, for other people. And we can't, at the end of the day, it's like, it's about you. Yeah. And
one of the darkest lessons I think I learned was, I think the people who hurt me the most after I came out of my experience, they benefited a lot from the unhealed version of me.
Ooh.
Oh, that's good.
So it was when I started to see the patterns and to see the toxic behavior and started putting up boundaries and speaking out against it, that
they didn't like that.
Yeah. So I have to remind myself that too. Like, I'm probably never going to be for them ever again.
Yeah.
Because I don't allow that in my life anymore.
Yeah.
And
That's
I
okay.
am okay with that. That's what I mean. Like, I'm okay with that.
You're not. Yeah.
Like, but they're not okay
Right.
with
Sorry.
it.
That's what I meant. That's what I meant.
I'm like, no, I totally am.
Yeah.
Should we, I mean, we want people to follow you because I think a lot of people have reached out to us specifically about ketamine. And I love that you are doing like the mixture of microdosing and ketamine, because the last interview we did with Katie Walker and Nick with Wake and Revitalist, she talks a lot about how psilocybin is a really good maintenance for ketamine treatments.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's easier to access than to pay out of pocket, you know,
Absolutely.
for a very expensive treatment.
They work, from what I've read and what I understand, and I am like no medical professional, is that they work very similarly in tandem and separately. They work very, very similarly.
But I think that the legality aspect of ketamine is a lot more, people are more willing to take that little jump.
Yep.
And then I think once you do that, which, you know, I think that's the hardest part for anyone, is taking that first step. Then it's like, oh, okay. Now I'm going to look into other stuff. And that's why I think it's like an as needed thing. It's not a scam. I remember somebody saying to me, like, ketamine felt like a scam to them because it's medically legal, but insurance doesn't cover it. And they're like, yeah, but you have to pay this much money. And I was like, but it kind of has to be that way because it's being used off label.
Right. That's the whole,
like, it's not a scam. Reason. Like, they're not scamming you. You don't have to do 6 treatments every few months. Like, you do the 6 treatments and then it's up to you.
Yeah.
There's no program after that where you're having to follow a protocol. Like, but I think that you're more in touch with yourself enough to know when it's right for you to do it again, or when it's time to maybe do a mushroom trip or a journey like that, or microdose, or so many positive things. Okay, so I want our listeners, I'm sorry, I always go off.
I love it.
I want our listeners to follow you and go into your Instagram story highlights, because they can follow along, and you have them numbered, right? Like ketamine 1, ketamine 2.
Yeah, so my Instagram is just my first and last name with a period in between. So just Janna .Cone. And I have K therapy highlights 1 through 6 now. Nice. I've got to figure out how I'm going to condense all of them, but I literally have I've just documented so much on stories that I just save it to a highlight. And so they're all there. And then all my recent posts on my feed, or majority of them, are all ketamine or microdosing related. And I'm in the process of figuring out how I can be more accessible and help more women in my shoes. And so in the future, whether that's, I don't know what format that's going to be in, whether it's in a blog or a podcast of my own or something, but I welcome anyone to message me. There's nothing more that I love to do than talk to other people that are struggling with their mental health, because it just makes such a difference when you can relate and, have such empathy for someone. Yeah. So Instagram is my place right now where you can reach out and find me. I post mostly all things mental health and human design, really. So yeah, that's where I am.
Well, I hope that you do something with this, because I think that you are such a beautiful light, and I'm looking forward to seeing
where this goes.
Yes, more of you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you too. I mean, more than I can ever explain.
It was so
Thank
awesome.
you.
One day we're also going to meet in person. That'll happen
Yes,
too.
we are.
So we're going to put
Yes,
that
I
out
vote
there.
at like a retreat or something.
Oh, that would be so
Yes.
awesome.
Maybe Jamaica or I don't know. We'll figure it out.
I'm here for it.
Okay, we'll figure that
It's
out.
gonna happen. Okay.
And for all of our listeners, we will put all of Janna's information on our post on our on the bio for the episode when it drops. And rate, review, and subscribe and share, because in this situation, you never know who this story might give some hope to. So just share.
Yes.
You never know. All right. And we will see you guys on the other side.